Vlad the Impaler, or Vlad Dracula as he's commonly known, was a significant figure in Wallachian history, serving as the voivode of Wallachia, modern-day Romania, 3 times between 1448 and his death in 1477. Born around 1428 or perhaps 31, Vlad is renowned for his firm leadership and ruthless tactics, in particular his use of impalement as a form of punishment. His reign was marked by conflicts with the Ottoman Empire, which he fiercely resisted, earning him a reputation for brutality, but also as a defender of Christian Europe against Islamic expansion. The epithet, the Impaler, derives from that preferred method of execution, where his victims were hoisted up and impaled onto stakes. This gruesome practice was intended to instill fear among his enemies and maintain order within his realm. However, it also earned him infamy in later accounts of his reign, becoming the inspiration of the character of Count Dracula in Bram Stoker's famous novel. Despite his harsh methods, Vlad, or as he's also known, Vlad III, is considered by many to be a national hero of Romania, admired for his determination to defend Wallachia against its enemies and his efforts to resist foreign domination. His legacy is certainly a complex one, with interpretations of his rule varying widely between admiration for his patriotism and condemnation for his extreme cruelty. Nonetheless, Vlad the Impaler remains a prominent figure in Romanian history and folklore, symbolizing both the struggle for independence while also nurturing the darker aspects of human nature. Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. If it's your first time here, it's good to meet you, and if you're a returning viewer, it's great to have you back. If you'd like to support the channel, consider heading over to the Patreon, where all the videos are ad-free. Otherwise, like and comment on the video with your thoughts. And if you are so inclined, subscribe to the channel if you'd like to hear more of these style videos. Now, without further ado, let's get on to our topic for today, Vlad the Impaler. Vlad III, known as Vlad the Impaler or Vlad Dracula, was the second legitimate son of Vlad II Dracula, who himself was an illegitimate son of Mircea I of Wallachia. Vlad II earned the moniker Dracul due to his membership in the Order of the Dragon, a chivalric order founded by Sigismund of Luxembourg, King of Hungary, dedicated to defending Christendom against the Ottoman Empire's expansion into Europe. Between 1428 and 1431, Vlad III was likely born after his father settled in Transylvania around 1429. Historian Radu Florescu suggests that Vlad was born in the Transylvanian Saxon town of Sighișoara, where his father lived from 1431 to 35. The identity of Vlad's mother still remains uncertain, with some historians proposing she was either a daughter or relative of Alexander I of Moldavia, while others suggest she may have been Vlad II's first wife, whose details are also unknown. After seizing power in Wallachia, following the death of his half-brother Alexander I Aldia in 1436, Vlad II, that's Vlad's father, issued a charter on January the 20th, 1437, which mentioned Vlad III and his elder brother Mircea as his firstborn sons. Subsequent documents from 1437 to 1439 also refer to Vlad and Mircea, as well as their younger brother Radu, who was also called Radu the Handsome. Apparently, he was quite the looker. In March 1442, Vlad Dracula, Vlad II, refused to support an Ottoman invasion of Transylvania after a meeting with John Hunyadi, voivode of Transylvania. As a result, he was ordered by the Ottoman Sultan, Murad II, to Gallipoli to demonstrate his loyalty. Vlad II, accompanied by his sons Vlad III and Radu, went to the Ottoman Empire, where they were all imprisoned. Although Vlad Dracula was released later that year, his sons Vlad III and Radu remained hostages to ensure their father's continued loyalty, imprisoned in the fortress of Ergigos Emit. Their lives were in danger after their father supported Vladislaus, King of Poland in Hungary, against the Ottoman Empire during the Crusade of Varna in 1444. Although Vlad II Dracula feared for his son's safety, neither Vlad nor Radu were harmed after their father's rebellion. Around 1446, Vlad Dracula once again acknowledged the Sultan's suzerainty and promised to pay a yearly tribute. In November 1447, John Hunyadi invaded Wallachia, leading to Vlad Dracula's murder along with his eldest son, Mircea. Vlad and Radu fled to the Ottoman Empire, and Hunyadi installed Vladislav II as the ruler of Wallachia. Upon the deaths of his father and their elder brother, Vlad became a potential claimant to the throne of Wallachia. Vladislav II of Wallachia, accompanied by John Hunyadi, launched a campaign against the Ottoman Empire in September 1448. Sensing an opportunity, Vlad led an Ottoman army into Wallachia in early October, taking advantage of Vladislav's absence. However, the Ottomans had already captured and fortified the fortress of Gheorghiu on the Danube, which hindered Vlad's advance. In the ensuing Battle of Kosovo between October 17th and 18th, the Ottomans defeated Hunyadi's army. Despite urging from Hunyadi's deputy, Nicholas Vizakni, for Vlad to meet him in Transylvania, Vlad, unfortunately for him, refused. With the remnants of his army, Vladislav II returned to Wallachia, forcing Vlad to retreat to the Ottoman Empire by December 7th, 1448. After his fall, Vlad initially settled in Edirne in the Ottoman Empire. However, he soon moved to Moldavia, where his relative, Bogdan II, had ascended to the throne with John Hunyadi's support in the autumn of 1449. Following Bogdan's murder by Peter III, Aaron, in October 1451, Bogdan's son Stefan fled to Transylvania with Vlad to seek assistance from Hunyadi. Despite their efforts, Hunyadi concluded a 3-year truce with the Ottoman Empire on November the 20th, 1451, acknowledging the Wallachian boyar's right to elect Vladislav II's successor if he died. Vlad then attempted to settle in Brasov, a center of Wallachian boyars expelled by Vladislav II, but Hunyadi forbade the burghers from sheltering him on February the 6th, 1452. So, Vlad decided to return to Moldavia, where Alexandrel had dethroned Peter Aaron. His activities during the following years are unclear, but he likely returned to Hungary before July 3rd, 1456, when Hunyadi tasked him with defending the Transylvanian border. The circumstances and the exact date of Vlad's return to Wallachia are uncertain, but it is believed that he invaded Wallachia with Hungarian support, either in April, July, or August of 1456. Vladislav II died during this invasion. Shortly after, Vlad sent his first extant letter as voivode of Wallachia to the burghers of Brasov on September 10th. In this letter, he promised to protect them in case of an Ottoman invasion of Transylvania, and sought their assistance if the Ottomans occupied Wallachia. Additionally, he expressed his authoritarian personality by stating, and I quote, "When a man or a prince is strong and powerful, he can make peace as he wants to, but when he is weak, a stronger one will come and do what he wants to him." According to various sources, including Launikos Chalkokinodil's Chronicle, hundreds or even thousands of people were executed at Vlad's order at the beginning of his reign. He initiated a purge against the boyars, who had participated in the murder of his father and elder brother, or at least whom he expected of doing so or plotting against him. Launikos Chalkokondyls noted that Vlad quickly effected a great change and utterly revolutionized the affairs of Wallachia by granting the money, property, and other goods of his victims to his supporters. The lists of members of the princely council during Vlad's reign also indicate a significant turnover, with only 2 members retaining their positions between 1457 and 1461. After the death of John Hunyadi on August 11, 1456, his elder son Ladislaus Hunyadi became the Captain General of Hungary. Ladislaus accused Vlad of having no intention of remaining faithful to the King of Hungary, and ordered the burghers of Brasov to support Vladislav II's brother, Dan III, against Vlad. Additionally, the burghers of Sibiu supported another pretender, identified as Vlad's illegitimate brother, Vlad Kalugarul, who took possession of Amlas, traditionally held by the rulers of Wallachia in Transylvania. Following Ladislaus V of Hungary's execution of Ladislaus Hunyadi on March 16, 1457, Ladislaus Hunyadi's mother, Elizabeth Siliagi, and her brother, Mikhail Siliagi, incited a rebellion against the king. In the midst of this civil war in Hungary, Vlad assisted Stefan, son of Bogdan II of Moldavia, in his move to seize Moldavia in June 1457 rather. Vlad also raided Transylvania, plundering villages around Brasov and Sibiu. The earliest German stories about Vlad describe him as carrying men, women, and children from a Saxon village to Wallachia and impaling them all. This attack against the Transylvanian Saxons, who remained loyal to the king, bolstered the position of the Siliagis. Vlad's representatives played a role in peace negotiations between Michael Siliagi and the Saxons, resulting in a treaty where the burghers of Brasov agreed to expel Dan from their town. Vlad also promised the merchants of Sibiu their freedom to conduct trade in Wallachia in exchange for similar treatment of Wallachian merchants in Transylvania. In a letter dated the December 1st of 1457, Vlad referred to Michael Siliagi as his lord and elder brother. Matthias Corvinus, Ladislaus Hunyadi's younger brother, was elected the King of Hungary on January 24th, 1458. He ordered the burghers of Sibiu to maintain peace with Vlad on March 3rd. Vlad, asserting his authority, styled himself Lord and Ruler of all of Wallachia and the duchies of Amlas and Fagarash on September 20, 1459, indicating his control over these traditional Transylvanian territories. Moving on to the late March of that same year, 1458, Michael Siliagi allowed the Wallachian boyars, including one official named Vladislav II of Wallachia, to settle in Transylvania. However, Vlad had this boyar, named Michael, killed soon after. Although Vlad initially sought the assistance of the burghers in Brasov in sending craftsmen to Wallachia in May, his relationship with the Saxons soured by the end of the year. There are theories suggesting that conflict arose because Vlad prohibited Saxons from entering Wallachia, compelling them to send their goods to Wallachian merchants at compulsory border fairs. However, there's no direct documentation of Vlad's protectionist measures or border fairs at all. It's merely speculation at this point. And also, Vlad emphasized that he had also always promoted free trade during his reign. But that may have just been some kind words. In response to the Saxons confiscating steel bought by a Wallachian merchant without repaying him, Vlad took severe actions against some of the Saxon merchants, reportedly ransacking and torturing them, as documented in a letter written by Basarab Laiota on January the 1st, 1459. Basarab, claiming Wallachian heritage, settled in Sigisaura and asserted his right to rule Wallachia. However, Matthias Corvinus supported Dan III, who was in Brasov at the time, against Vlad. Dan III accused Vlad of gruesome acts, alleging that Vlad had impaled or burned alive Saxon merchants along with their children in Wallachia, though this could have just been propaganda, turn the public opinion against Vlad, or he could have actually done it. He probably did. Despite these accusations, Vlad continued his rule, He defeated and executed Dan III after the latter's invasion of Wallachia. Vlad then launched an invasion into southern Transylvania, destroying the suburbs of Brasov and ordering the impalement of captured men and women. Negotiations ensued, during which Vlad demanded the expulsion or punishment of Wallachian refugees from Brasov. Peace was eventually restored, as evidenced by Vlad's address to the burghers of Brasov as his brothers and friends on July 26, 1460. In the August of that same year, Vlad invaded the regions around Amlas and Fagarash to punish the local inhabitants who had supported Dan III against him. These actions underscore Vlad's iron-fisted rule and his determination to maintain control over Wallachia, despite opposition from various factions. Konstantin Mihailovic, a janissary in the Sultan's army, recorded that Vlad refused to pay homage to the Ottoman Sultan in an unspecified year. Similarly, Giovanni Maria degli Angiolelli, a Renaissance historian, wrote that Vlad had failed to pay tribute to the Sultan for 3 years. These records suggest that Vlad ignored the suzerainty of Mehmed II as early as 1459. However, both works were written decades after the events they describe. Tursun Beg, a secretary in the Sultan's court, stated that Vlad's defiance of the Ottoman Empire began when Sultan Mehmed II was away on a long expedition in Trebizond in 1461. According to Tursun Beg, Vlad initiated new negotiations with Matthias Corvinus, the King of Hungary. However, the Sultan was informed by his spies, prompting him to send his envoy, Thomas Katabelinos, to Wallachia with orders for Vlad to come to Constantinople immediately. Additionally, the Sultan secretly instructed Hamza, Bey of Nicopolis, to capture Vlad as he crossed the Danube. In response to the Sultan's actions, Vlad executed Hamza and Katobelonos upon discovering the Sultan's deceit. He then gave orders, in fluent Turkish by the way, to the commander of the fortress of Giurgiu to open the gates, allowing Wallachian soldiers to capture it. Subsequently, Vlad invaded the Ottoman Empire, devastating villages along the Danube River. He informed Matthias Corvinus of his military actions in a letter dated 11th of February 1462, where he claimed to have killed over 23,000 Turks and Bulgarians during the campaign. Vlad sought military assistance from Corvinus, citing his actions as necessary for the honor of the king, the Holy Crown of Hungary, and of course, the preservation of Christianity. Tensions between Moldavia and Wallachia had also escalated by 1462, as evidenced by a letter from the Genoese governor of Kaffa. These developments highlight Vlad's increasing defiance of Ottoman authority and his efforts to rally support from neighboring powers. Upon learning of Vlad's invasion, Mehmed II raised an army of over 150,000 soldiers, said to be second in size only to the one that occupied Constantinople in 1453, according to some sources at the time. The magnitude of his army suggests that the Sultan's primary aim was to occupy Wallachia. However, Mehmed had previously granted Wallachia to Vlad's brother, Radu, indicating that the Sultan's principal purpose may have been to simply change the ruler of Wallachia. The Ottoman fleet landed at Brela, the only Wallachian port on the Danube, in May. Subsequently, the main Ottoman army crossed the Danube under Mehmed's command at Nikopol, Bulgaria, on June the 4th, 1462. Outnumbered, Vlad adopted a scorched earth policy and retreated towards Targoviste. During the night of June 16th to 17th, Vlad launched a daring counterattack on the Ottoman camp in an attempt to capture or kill the Sultan himself. However, the Wallachians mistakenly attacked the tents of the viziers Mahmud Pasha and Isaac, failing to reach the Sultan's quarters. Despite this, Vlad and his forces managed to retreat from the Ottoman camp at dawn. Mehmed's army entered Targoviste at the end of June, only to find the town deserted. Well, almost deserted. They were horrified to discover what the Chalconkendiles described as a forest of the impaled. Thousands of stakes, bearing the carcasses of executed people, as far as the eye could see, many of them still alive and twitching around. Mehmed was reportedly quite taken back by the brutal tactics of Vlad, acknowledging his diabolical understanding of governing his realm and its people. This spectacle certainly left the Turkish forces in complete disbelief, as they witnessed men, women, and children impaled on stakes, with birds nesting in their entrails. You can only imagine how much of a demoralizing effect this had on that army. Imagine if there was any chance that you may lose the battle against Vlad the Impaler, that you would join those in the forest of the impaled. Well, it's probably best that you go and fight a different war. That being said, at the time, the treatment of prisoners of war was, well, pretty terrible across the board. Tursun Beg's account reveals that the Ottomans faced challenges due to the summer heat and thirst during the campaign in Wallachia. Consequently, Sultan Mehmed decided to retreat from Wallachia and march towards Brela. Meanwhile, Stefan III of Moldavia rushed to seize the important fortress of Gilia, where a Hungarian garrison was still stationed. Vlad also headed towards Gilia, but he left a troop of 6,000 soldiers to impede the Ottoman army's progress. Unfortunately, the Ottomans managed to defeat the Wallachian forces. During the siege of Gilia, Stefan of Moldavia was wounded and returned to Moldavia before Vlad arrived at his fortress. Although the main Ottoman army had left Wallachia, Vlad's brother Radu and his Ottoman troops remained in the Baragan plain. Radu then sent messengers to the Wallachians, warning them of the possibility of another Ottoman invasion. Despite Vlad's victories against Radu and his Ottoman allies in subsequent battles, more and more Wallachians began to desert to Radu's side. Seeing his support dwindling, Vlad retreated to the Carpathian Mountains, hoping for assistance from Matthias Corvinus. However, Albert of Eastern Meso, the deputy of the Count of the Seychelles, suggested in mid-August that the Saxons recognize Radu's authority. Radu also made enticing offers of the burghers of Brasov, promising to confirm their commercial privileges and compensate them with a great amount of money, around 15,000 ducats reportedly. Matthias Corvinus then arrived in Transylvania in November 1462, and negotiations between him and Vlad lasted for several weeks. However, Corvinus was not inclined to wage war against the Ottoman Empire. At the king's command, his Czech mercenary commander, John Jiskra of Brandis, captured Vlad near Rukar in Wallachia. To justify Vlad's imprisonment to Pope Pius II and the Venetians, who had provided funds for a campaign against the Ottoman Empire, Corvinus presented 3 letters that were allegedly written by Vlad on the 7th of November 1462, addressed to Mehmed II, Mahmud Pasha, and Stefan of Moldavia. These letters purportedly offered Vlad's allegiance to the Sultan in exchange for being restored to his throne in Wallachia. But no one really believed this, at least in hindsight. Most historians believed the documents were simply a forgery to provide a pretext for Vlad's imprisonment. So, Vlad ended up becoming stuck in a dirty old dungeon through no fault of his own. He was initially imprisoned in the city of Belgrade. That's not the Belgrade you're thinking of. It's now Alba Iulia in Romania, before being transferred to Visegrad, where he remained for 14 years. There are no preserved documents referring to Vlad between 1462 and 75. But in the summer of 1475, Stephen III of Moldavia requested that Matthias Corvinus send Vlad to Wallachia to confront Basarab Leota, who had submitted to the Ottomans. Stephen aimed to install a ruler in Wallachia who had been an enemy of the Ottoman Empire, as Moldavians saw the Wallachians as similar to the Turks. According to Slavic stories about Vlad, he was released only after he agreed to convert to Catholicism. However, the authenticity of this claim is uncertain. After being released by Matthias Corvinus as the lawful Prince of Wallachia, Vlad settled in Pest and later moved to Transylvania in the June of 1475, with the intention of settling in Sibiu. However, Mehmed acknowledged Basarab Leotia as the rightful ruler of Wallachia, leading Vlad to leave Transylvania for Buda in October of that same year. In Pécs, Vlad purchased a house known as Dracula Haza, or Dracula's house in Hungarian. In January 1476, John Pongrak of Dengeleg, voivode of Transylvania, urged the people of Brasov to send Vlad his supporters who had settled in the town, as Corvinus and Basarab Leotia had concluded a treaty. However, the tensions between the Transylvanian Saxons and Basarab remained high, leading the Saxons to shelter Basarab's opponents. Corvinus then dispatched Vlad and the Serbian Vuk Gurevic to fight against the Ottomans in Bosnia. They captured Srebrenica and the other fortresses in early 1476, with Vlad employing his notorious terror tactics during the campaign. Meanwhile, Mehmed invaded Moldavia and defeated Stephen III at the Battle of Valea Alba on July 26, 1476. Stephen Bathory and Vlad then entered Moldavia, lifting the siege of the fortress at Targu Neamt in late August. Corvinus ordered the Transylvanian Saxons to support Bathory's planned invasion of Wallachia on September the 6th, with Vlad confirming the commercial privileges of the local burghers in Wallachia on October 7th. Bathory's forces then captured Targoviste on November the 8th, and Stephen of Moldavia and Vlad occupied Bucharest, forcing Basarab to seek refuge in the Ottoman Empire on November the 16th. Vlad was then crowned before November 26th, and he informed the merchants of Brasov about his victory, urging them to come to Wallachia. But it didn't last too long. Vlad met his demise while fighting against Basarab, who had returned to Wallachia, but this time with Ottoman support. Vlad passed away in late December of 1476, or perhaps January of the following year. According to various sources, including Stephen III of Moldavia, Vlad's Moldavian retinue was also massacred. So rest in peace to those guys. The circumstances, at least the specific details of Vlad's death, are still pretty unclear. Most reliable sources suggest that Vlad's army of about 2,000 was simply overwhelmed and destroyed by Basarab's force of 4,000 near Snagov. The exact details, of course, vary, with some accounts suggesting he was killed by a disguised Turkish assassin in his camp, while others propose that he was mistaken for a Turk during his own troops during the chaos of battle. According to Leonardo Botta, an ambassador to Buda, Vlad's severed head was sent to Mehmed II and eventually displayed on a high stake in Constantinople. As for his burial, once again, we don't quite know. Popular tradition holds that Vlad was buried in the monastery of Snagov, but excavations in 1933 found no tomb below the supposed grave marker that was attributed to him, just an empty space. Historian Konstantin Rezhechevici suggests that Vlad was more likely buried in the first church of the Kamana monastery, which Vlad had established and was near the battlefield where he fell. The stories about Vlad's brutal acts began circulating during his lifetime, and were further promoted by the courtiers of Matthias Corvinus after Vlad's arrest. Papal legate Niccolo Modreciense had written about these stories to Pope Pius in 1462, which were later included in the Pope's commentaries. Michael Behem composed a poem titled Story of a Despot Called Dracula, Voivode of Wallachia, which was allegedly based on the conversation with a Catholic monk who had escaped from Vlad's prison. Behem's poem recounted various gruesome acts attributed to Vlad, including impaling monks and apparently a donkey. Gabriel Rengoni, Bishop of Eger, also recorded the rumor that Vlad used to like to catch rats in the prison for the purpose of mutilating them for his own enjoyment. Antonio Bonfini, in his Historia Pannonica, described Vlad as a man of extreme cruelty, seeking to justify both Vlad's removal and restoration by Matthias Corvinus. Bonfini's anecdotes about Vlad were further propagated by Sebastian Munster in his Cosmography, who also highlighted Vlad's reputation for a tyrannical form of justice. One particularly infamous story attributed to Vlad involves Turkish messengers who came to pay respects, but upon doing so, refused to remove their turbans, citing their cultural and religious customs. No big deal, right? Well, apparently Vlad thought hats inside were very rude, so to teach them a lesson, he allegedly nailed their turbans to their heads with spikes. If they wanted to keep them on, well, they could keep them on forever. These accounts just contributed to the enduring legend of Vlad the Impaler's brutality and ruthlessness. And of course, just like the whole story of the man who caught the fish, it gets bigger every time you tell it. Now, we also have some German sources who were equally as creative. Works containing stories about Vlad's cruelty were published in Low German in the Holy Roman Empire before 1480. These stories, allegedly written in the 1460s, describe Vlad's campaign across the Danube, but do not mention Mehmed's invasion of Wallachia in the same year. They provide detailed accounts of Vlad between the Transylvanian Saxons, suggesting their origin in the literary minds of the Saxons. The narratives, of course, depict Vlad as a demented psychopath, a sadist and a gruesome murderer, surpassing figures like Caligula and Nero in cruelty. However, caution is of course once again warranted in interpreting these stories, as Vlad's brutal acts were likely exaggerated, or perhaps even completely made up by Saxons in order to vilify him further. The advent of movable type printing contributed to the popularity of these stories, making them early bestsellers in Europe. If one thing has not changed in human psychology, it's that generally those horrible and really gruesome things, well, they always generate quite a lot of interest. For example, issues would always depict horrifying scenes. Editions from Nuremberg in 1499 and Strasbourg in the following year show Vlad dining at a table, having a nice dinner, completely surrounded by victims impaled on poles. One particularly gruesome account from the German sources describes Vlad having a large copper cauldron built with a wooden lid containing holes. Victims were placed into the cauldron with their heads protruding from the holes, and water was boiled beneath them until they succumbed. Vlad had allegedly also ordered women to be impaled together with their children, with the babies inserted head first into their mothers' wounded chests after death. The tale of the voivode of Dracula is preserved in more than 20 manuscripts, dating from the 15th to the 18th centuries. These manuscripts, written in Russian, contain expressions not typical of the Russian language, but found in South Slavic idioms, indicating that the original text was recorded in a South Slavic language. It was likely written in Buda between 1482 and 86. Alright, next up, another Slavic one. The Skazania consists of 19 anecdotes, no longer than the German stories about Vlad, and it is considered a mixture of fact and fiction. While nearly half of the anecdotes highlight Vlad's brutality, they also emphasize with his cruelty contributed to strengthening the central government in Wallachia. For example, one anecdote recounts how Vlad's hatred of stealing promoted public order, contrasting with the German stories that focus on his cruel acts. One story recounted is that he placed I believe it was a pot of gold or some kind of expensive jewelry, in the middle of town, prompting anybody to take it if they wanted to, but just know that this is the property of Vlad. Of course, nobody touched it. Additionally, the Skazania criticizes Vlad for his conversion to Catholicism, and they attribute his death to this apostasy. Now, by modern standards, the mass murders committed by Vlad would likely be considered acts of genocide and war crimes. Romanian Defense Minister Jan Mirsopascu suggested that Vlad would have faced condemnation for crimes against humanity had he been put on trial at Nuremberg. But if you ask many other Romanians, they may tell you something different. In fact, many Romanians see him as kind of a folk hero who did what had to be done. Me? I don't know. I'm still making up my mind. But he certainly knows how to keep public order. And in my country, that's a crisis that we certainly need some help with. Well, thank you again for joining me. What an interesting video, if I do say so myself. I've known this character for quite a while, and was waiting to make a video on him. So I'm glad that I had the opportunity to do so. I'd like to thank my Mega Chat patron Stark Factory for his glorious contribution to the channel. If you would like to become a Patreon, then head over to the Patreon link, which you may find in the description or the comments. Otherwise, once again accept my sincere thank you for joining me, and I hope that I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.